Can you believe it? All right. Day 3. We, just some random things we talked about. Somebody mentioned they're using Zoho Writer. I think I got that right. But anyway, you have to be careful about how much time you spend, but it's really good for learning, for your brain, to try new things. Here they're trying a new word processor. This had to do with security. A student said, well, they looked at, they produced a PDF from something. I don't even know what they were using to do it. But then when they, so they produced the PDF, and then when they submitted it, some information was missing. Well, that's a security issue, okay? And that's happening somewhere in there where it's being processed, right? Because you now have a document that's not accurate, data integrity. Good discussion at the end of chapter 1 or 2. Well, it would have been chapter 1 in terms of white, gray, black hats, and you know, people's perception of how they do that. We did look up rewards to break in. There has been quite a bit of money spent by high-end companies for people who, we did a little search on, a little research on people who are able to find things wrong, okay, and so forth. Up here we mentioned how dangerous the internet is, using VPNs to go through it. We reviewed some things we had talked about previously. I know some students mentioned frameworks, a little hard to understand. Well, there's more to come, so we work around these frameworks. The Netflix, and I showed them some emails. I think Sans, the hacker, I forget, newsletter, cyber or something. Anyway, some newsletters I have. Already went a minute longer than I wanted to there. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These key security principles. So you might wonder, you know, why do we need to understand this? Well, we have to have some premise to speak from. Okay? And so this is a good way to look at it. These 3 principles, we already talked about what they are. I don't need to repeat that. We talked about the states of data. And then we spent some time talking about, you know, what technology we can use, products, devices, all range of how do we control access. And then in order to do the technology, I kind of beat this, you know, over and over. I kept wanting him to come up and say, well, you got to have some kind of policies before you can, you know, put that technology into use. And then the policies will probably give us some procedures coming from some administration level, you know, some level, you know, not anybody can just make a policy. And then one of our key issues in security is managing the people. So then we went in depth talking about confidentiality, and the students mentioned, yeah, encryption. So authentication, what you are, what you know, what you have, authorization to resources. Okay, some key things, access, ops, operations, and how you manage this. Do you turn the services on or off? Access lists, we'll look at those roles and groups, users. We'll look at that in AWS later on. Again, access control. Accounting, what did they do, what did they access, what times they access, change. We mentioned the time there, network time protocol. Okay, I'll mention this now. Zero trust, this next generation firewall ideas, and least privilege. You don't trust anybody, and you only give people the privileges they need. Okay. And that's all done, right, in this area here. We did talk a little more about data privacy, what's public, what's private, what businesses' responsibility, and then the government, you know, they have top secret, and they have all those levels. Categories, how do we categorize that? Laws and liability. because it's such a big issue, okay, in terms of what data can be used where, whether it's here in the U.S. or in the world, we have developed a wide range of laws with some type of liability. We didn't go through and list them. There's some in the curriculum. There's a lot of them, like HEPA, health records and so forth. So many places collect, analyze data, and do these companies have policies for that, and are they taking care of people's privacy? We did have the students look up the difference between confidentiality and privacy. We can talk, that'll come up more later on. One thing we need to do with all of this is we need to be able to classify the data. And we talked a little bit about what Google Scholar is. We need to be able to do data classification in order for us to better be able to access the data, figure out who gets access to what, to manage confidentiality. Integrity, is it accurate? One way to maintain that is access control, having some kind of checks, hash, checksum, backups, check the backups, and there's different levels of data here. Again, that goes to speak towards how do we classify data in terms of what measures do we have to go in order to, is it highly critical that it's perfectly accurate or not critical at all, and then a bunch of stages in between. States of data, you should understand stored, the idea of different storage methods. We don't need to go through those. Type of storage. When data is transmitted, students mentioned, well, we should encrypt it. Services like SSH, VPNs, transport layer socket, secure socket layer. This is now this. HTTP. So the students gave examples of how and what we should use when we transmit data to secure it. And does all data have to be transmitted? Have to be transmitted securely? No. It depends on how you got the data classified. Okay. And then when data is being processed, so in the work of putting data in, we can have issues when it's being modified. And you say modified, like when we're is your software doing the calculations correctly? When you compress data, if you're not careful how you compress it, you could lose some data, and that would be on purpose, loosely compressed. The idea of when we encrypt and decrypt, is that process working? Okay. And then when we output it, was there something happens to it before it goes to the printer or before it goes to whoever, before as it actually leaves, is there something happening to the data? And we talked a little bit about countermeasures. There is software that allows, we deal with software, all kinds of software products. We have to be concerned on how we manage networks. And you hear a lot about endpoint security in talking about networks, how we access networks. There are hardware, actual firewalls, and hardware devices, certain kind of devices to control content. We talked a little bit about zero trust and least privilege in this whole idea of filtering based on the content ID, what user it is, and what app they're running to work with that content. A little bit about how we manage that in the cloud. We're going to talk a lot about, when we talk about endpoints and countermeasures, network access control with radius servers and 802.1x protocol. VPNs is an example, how we do Wi-Fi now, we have WPA3, some new ideas on how that secures. All right, last thing, training and education, becoming aware. Know before is what NIAC uses. People be aware of security. Developing an awareness culture where people work for a company and they're aware of security and the importance, and it's important to everyone, kind of building that culture. That can be really crucial. Last thing, did I say it twice? Probably. Students are working on, we're going to have initially 3 groups with 3 Linux machines, and we're going to start setting up between the machines authentication, authorization, and accounting, and set up password policies, put those policies in place, and we're going to develop our own security environment between these Linux machines and apply some of the things we're learning. That's it.